when we speak about the bad debt and provision for bad debt, now bad debt is different from the provision. Okay, I think I've explained bad debt some time past, that these are debts that are irrecoverable or debts that cannot be collected because the debtors or the customers might be having issues. For example, if the customer or the debtor is dead, then how much he or she owes the business becomes doubtful and may go into being bad. If the customer goes mad, okay, or insane, is also another reason. If the amount involved is very insignificant or immaterial, okay, like somebody owing a business 1+1, it's insignificant, so the business will write it off as a debt that will not be collected. And then lastly, if the person is declared bankrupt, and bankruptcy here means that the person's debts are way or far beyond his or her resources. So that is bad debt. Now, if you see it in the additional information, bad debt is an expense, as you all know. So you take it to the profit and loss as expense. And then in the balance sheet, you would deduct it from the debtor's balance. So that's what is seen here. Okay. You add it to your expenses or you debit to the profit and loss account. In the balance sheet, you deduct from debtors. So that is bad debt. Simple like that. Then the provision for bad debt. Provision for bad debt. This one is a bit tricky in the sense that it can come in three different ways. And I would want to use a practical scenario or example to help you understand this provision for bad debt. So if you know bad debt to be a debt that cannot be collected or is deemed irrecoverable, then provision for bad debt means that the business is trying to set aside or charge against its profit to be able to, as it were, cushion itself if the bad debt occurs. So for example, if Omega business, okay, has a lot of debtors and Omega suspects that some of them will not be able to pay, then Omega will go ahead to make a provision out of the profit it has made to be able to cushion itself if eventually those debtors do not settle. Okay, so it's more or less like a measure to reduce the shock or the losses if debtors do not pay their debt. Please, does that make sense to you? Okay, I want to believe so. So now, the first scenario is that the business is just making the provision or creating the provision. Okay, that is, the business is making the provision for the first time. So first time provision, or let me make it first time making provision. Okay, if that happens, if it's the first time, again, you take it to your profit and loss account as expense. And then when you go to the balance sheet, you less it from debtors. Okay, so that's the point. Now, after you've made the provision, as the years go by, it becomes necessary that you may have to increase it. So you may have to increase the provision, or there's also the possibility that you may have to decrease it. So these are the three scenarios I'm talking about. When you first create it, and then subsequently if you have to increase it or decrease it. Now, if you have to increase it, what it means is that what you earlier created is small. So you still have to add more. By that, you go to your profit and loss and still take more from your profit and loss. So in the profit and loss, the increment, and please pay attention to that word, it's only the increment or the increase that is taken to the profit and loss. And is treated as what? Expense. Again, in the balance sheet, you less the new provision. And bear with me, I'll come back to explain some of these things. Okay. Now the third scenario is where you have to decrease it. If you have to decrease it, then again in your profit and loss account, this time it will not be an expense. Okay, the decrease amount will be added to the other income or your gross profit. Then again in the balance sheet, you less the new provision from the test figure. Okay, so professors, these are the three scenarios under provision for bad debt. And now let me make it more relevant. When you are coming to school, you know definitely you'd have to take a vehicle, so transportation costs, right? So you make a first time provision for your transportation cost. How are you going to do that? You will pick the money from your pocket, so you will less it from your pocket. So in this scenario, your pocket is your profit. So if you are making a provision for bad debt, you take it from your profit. That is why provision is treated as an expense in the profit and loss account, because we are deducting it from our profit. Okay. Now, when you get to the balance sheet, you less it from the debtors figure. The reason is that you are making provision for those debts, so you have to less it from your debtors figure. Okay, to come back to your net debtors. All of that things being equal. Okay. So now, if you make a provision for your transportation, let's say 50 cedis. 50 cedis. Okay. Then you get to the station and the transport fare is actually 70 cedis. Then what happens? It means that your provision for 50 is not enough. You have to increase it to what? 70. So the increment is how much? 20. That increment will be taken from where? From your pocket. Okay, so you go back to your pocket to take out extra 20 to add on to the 50 to get or make up for the new transport of what? 70. So we are saying where you have to increase it, you go back to your pocket. So in our case, you go back to your profit and you take it out. So you treat the increment as an expense. Now, when you get to the balance sheet, you less the new provision, and emphasis is on the new provision because as you see here, your old provision was 50 cedis, your new provision is what? 70 cedis. And it is based on this you compared to see the increment. So it's the new provision you less from your debtors figure. The last scenario is where you go to the station and the drivers tell you, oh, the transport fare is now 35 cedis. So then what happens? It means that you made a provision for 50. The true transport fare is 35. So it means that you have to decrease your provision from 50 to 35. So you would realize a decrease of how much? 15. This 15, the question is, where would you take it? You put it inside your pocket, right? Because the transport fare has reduced. So you put it back in your pocket. So in our case, our pocket is our profit. So if we are putting anything back into our pocket, it means we are adding it back to our profit. That is why for the decrease, we add the decrease amount to other income or gross profit. But again, when we get to the balance sheet, we less the new provision. So in this case, the new provision will be what? 35, which is the new transport fare. I think this is how best I can explain some of these things to you. If you are confused, please bring it up. Let me explain further. Use more examples. But if you all understand what I've said so far, then I think we are good to go. Professors, are we okay? No question? Okay. If there are no questions, so make it here. So provision for bad debt is generally referred to as a charge against your profit in order to allow for bad or doubtful debt. Okay. In the profit and loss account, like I've demonstrated to you, if you have to increase it, you add it to your expenses because you are lessening it from your profit. But if you have to decrease it, you add it to your gross profit. If you forget this, remember your pocket as your profit. So if you take money out of your pocket, okay, to make a provision for transport, and the transport has increased. So because of the increase, you have to go back to your pocket again and take more. So your pocket is your profit. If you are taking out of your profit, then that is an expense. If the opposite happens where the fare has reduced, that difference will get back into your pocket. And so you add that to your other income or gross profit. In the balance sheet, always less the new provision from your debtors figure. And that settles issue on provision for bad debt. So just remember this statement I've made when you are solving questions, especially under the sole trader or final account, I should say. Let's finally look at the last bit, which is interest on loan. Interest on loan. As we all know, when you go to the bank to take a loan, they charge you an interest. It normally comes at a rate 10%, 5%. If you see that in the question, apply the rate. So calculate the interest, okay? And it's an expense. So in your profit and loss account, you calculate the interest for the year and you add it to your expenses. In the balance sheet, you take any amount of interest that has not been paid as a current liability, because the interest on the loan itself is a debt you have to pay, so it's a current liability. But watch out to look out for any outstanding. If they have paid some of the interest, then it's only the remaining or the outstanding that goes into the balance sheet as a current liability. Question time, professors. Okay, I think my professors don't have questions. So these are the 10 adjustments we have gone through. Now, what you have to do as professors is to remember how to adjust them in the final account. If I want to be a bit benevolent, I will say the following adjustments are highly examinable in WASSCE. Okay, one of them is the prepaid expense, the accrued expense, the income is not highly examinable that much, and then you have your provision for bad debt and provision for depreciation. These are high, in fact, out of the 10, these 4 are highly examinable, highly examinable. So please take your time. I'll share the videos, and then take your time to watch it, especially through the weekend till we meet next week Wednesday. You will have more time. Okay. If you have a question, you can go ahead and ask me, Prof. Frank.
No, sir.
So out of the 10, these 4 are highly examinable. That is not to say the others are not examinable, but these are highly examinable. Your seniors, those who completed last year, I think they had interest on loan appearing, and yeah, and then these 4, right? So learn the 10, but please make sure you don't joke with these 4. Thank you very much. So let's meet in the next session. We take a question where we have this additional information and we see how best to adjust them in the final account. Thank you very much.